I'm sitting here in the early morning light, watching dust move slowly through the air near my window. It's Friday. I'm Margaret. I'm 83 years old. The house is quiet now. It's been quiet for years, but there's a difference between the quiet you choose and the quiet that chooses you. This is the second kind. Most of the people I shared my life with are gone. My husband Richard died 15 years ago. My parents decades before that. Friends from when I was young, the ones who knew me before I learned to be small, they're nearly all gone too. My children call sometimes. Not often. They have their own lives. And I raised them to be capable, not close. That was my mistake. But I'll get to that. What I want to tell you, and I need to say this while I still can, is that there's a truth I've learned that almost no one talks about. It took me most of my life to see it clearly, and by the time I did, I'd already made all the mistakes. The hard truth is this: most lives aren't ruined by the wrong choices. They're quietly erased by the safe ones. Nobody tells you that when you're young. They tell you to be careful, to be smart, to think ahead. And those things matter, sure. But what they don't tell you is that safety has a cost that doesn't show up for decades. I made every reasonable decision. I married a reliable man. I kept a clean house. I worked steady jobs. I raised 5 children who survived. On paper, I did everything right. But somewhere along the way, I forgot to ask myself what I actually wanted. And then I got so good at not asking that I eventually forgot how. If you're younger than me, and most of you are, I want you to hear this. Not as advice. I'm too old to believe advice changes anyone, but as witness, as someone who's already lived what you're living now, just slower, with fewer distractions. If you're my age or close to it, you already know what I'm going to say. You feel it in your bones. Maybe we can sit with it together. When I was young, I believed that love meant never being a burden. I learned that from my mother, who learned it from hers. You didn't ask for too much. You didn't make yourself inconvenient. You proved your worth by how little you needed. I was 9 years old the first time I understood this. I woke up during a thunderstorm, terrified. The thunder sounded like the house was breaking apart. I went to my parents' room. My mother walked me back to my bed. She wasn't angry, she wasn't cruel, she was just tired. She said, "You're fine. Go back to sleep." I lay there afterward, listening to the storm, and I realized that fear was something I had to handle alone, that needing comfort made me weak. I carried that lesson for 70 years. I married Richard when I was 22. Not because I couldn't live without him. Not because my heart raced when he walked into a room. I married him because he was consistent, because my parents approved, because it was the next sensible step. We had a fine marriage. That's the problem. It was fine. We paid bills on time. We rarely fought. We built a life that worked on paper, but we never learned how to talk about disappointment without one of us leaving the room. We never learned how to want more without feeling greedy. I told myself for years that this was what mature love looked like: steady, predictable, safe. What I know now is that I mistook endurance for intimacy. We lived together for 46 years. We raised 5 children. We survived illnesses and job losses and all the ordinary catastrophes of a long life. And through all of it, I don't think he ever really knew me, not because he didn't care, but because I never let him see. I made myself easy to live with. I made myself small. I thought that was love, taking up less space so there'd be room for everyone else. The years passed. I watched my children grow. I worked jobs that required nothing of me except showing up. I lived in a city I didn't like because it was closer to Richard's work. I left college after 1 year and never went back, even though I'd planned to, even though I told myself it was temporary. None of these decisions felt tragic at the time. That's what made them dangerous. When I was in my 40s, I was offered a promotion at work. It would have required some travel, not much, a few days a month. I turned it down without even considering it seriously. I told myself it wasn't practical, that my family needed me home. But the truth? I was afraid of being more visible, afraid of wanting something and failing, afraid of taking up space. My daughter, my youngest, went through a difficult time when she was 15. She came to me crying one night. I don't even remember now what it was about. A boy, probably, or friends. The kind of pain that feels enormous when you're young. I said, "You'll get over it. Life isn't fair." I thought I was preparing her, teaching her to be strong. What I was really doing was teaching her to stop confiding in me, teaching her that her feelings were an inconvenience. She's 50 now. She calls sometimes. Our conversations are polite. We talk about weather and grandchildren and nothing that matters. I regret that more than almost anything, not because I was cruel, but because I taught her what I'd been taught, that love means not asking for too much, that feelings are something you handle quietly, alone. I wish I'd known then what I know now, that strength isn't the same as silence, that preparing someone for hardship doesn't mean withholding comfort. But I didn't know, and now it's too late to undo. Richard got sick when he was 74. It was slow, painful. He died in a hospital room with me beside him, holding his hand. And when he finally went, I felt two things at once, grief and relief. The grief was real. We'd built a life together. He was a good man. He never hurt me, never betrayed me, never left. But the relief was real, too. And that's the part I've never told anyone. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to adjust to someone else's needs first. I could eat dinner at 9 o'clock if I wanted. I could leave dishes in the sink. I could sit in silence without it meaning something was wrong. I felt free, and then I felt ashamed for feeling free. It took me years to make peace with that, to understand that you can love someone and still feel relief when the weight of accommodating them is gone. That's not a failure of love. It's just the truth of what happens when you spend a lifetime making yourself smaller. I'm 83 now. I live alone in a house that feels too big. My children visit sometimes, but not often. My grandchildren are kind to me in the way you're kind to elderly relatives you don't really know. And here's what I've learned, finally, after all these years. The things I thought mattered, the clean house, the steady income, being pleasant and easy and never causing trouble, those things fade. Nobody remembers them. Nobody cares. What remains is the moments I was actually present, the times I was honest instead of careful, the few times I said what I really felt instead of what I thought I should feel. Those moments are so rare that I can count them. When I was 46, my father died. I'd barely seen him for years because we'd moved cities for Richard's job. At the funeral, I realized I'd never actually known him. Never asked him about his life, his fears, his regrets. I'd let distance become permanent because it was easier than being intentional. That still hurts. When I was 75, I fell, broke my hip, spent a week in the hospital. For the first time, I understood that my body wasn't going to keep working forever, that I was fragile, temporary. It terrified me, not the pain, but the realization that I'd spent my whole life waiting for permission to live fully, and now I was running out of time. If I could go back, I wouldn't change the big things. I wouldn't tell my younger self not to marry Richard or not to have children. Those choices gave me a life, even if it wasn't the one I might have chosen if I'd been braver. What I would change are the small things, the accumulation of small silences. I would write the letters I only wrote in my head. I would tell my mother I loved her out loud instead of assuming she knew. I would let my children see me cry instead of always being the strong one. I would ask Richard at least once, "Are you happy? Am I enough?" I would choose one thing, just one, based on what I wanted instead of what made sense, but I didn't. And now here I am. The loneliness I feel now isn't punishment. I've come to understand that. It's just delayed selfhood. I'm finally learning who I am when I'm not adjusting to someone else first. It's harder than it should be. I'm 83 years old, and I'm still learning how to be alone with myself without feeling like I failed. There's a kind of peace in that, though. A strange, quiet freedom. I don't need to prove anything anymore. I don't need to be impressive or useful or convenient. I can just be. Most days I sit here by the window and watch the world continue without me. Younger people rushing past, my grandchildren growing up in a world I don't fully understand. I used to feel left behind by that. Now I think maybe that's the job of old age, to witness, to hold the continuity of things, to remember what came before so the people who come after have something to measure against. I'm grateful I got to be here at all. That's the final truth. Not grateful for the life I lived perfectly because I didn't, but grateful that I got to live, to see 83 years of seasons, to hold my children when they were small, to watch snow fall and flowers bloom and light move across rooms. Grateful even for the losses because they meant I had something to lose. If you're young, don't wait for permission. Don't spend your life making yourself smaller so others feel comfortable. Don't confuse safety with happiness. Ask for what you want. Say what you feel. Choose something brave, even if it doesn't make sense. If you're my age, maybe it's not too late. Maybe there's still time to write one letter, to make one phone call, to say one true thing. I don't know, but I hope so. Thank you for sitting with me, for listening to an old woman talk about things that might not matter to anyone but her. If this meant something to you, if you felt less alone for a moment, you can subscribe. I'll be here as long as I can be. Take care of yourselves and each other. That's all that really lasts.